I'm Darrel, Chair of Operation NOAA and a parish priest in the Church of England. I am delighted to have been asked to make a contribution to this follow-on webinar. In 2013, Operation NOAA launched its Bright Now campaign to encourage all the Christian denominations in the United Kingdom to divest from fossil fuels and to support clean alternatives. Between 2013 and 2019, every major Christian denomination had done this, except the two largest, the Church of England and the Roman Catholic Church in England and Wales. Now, as I said, the Church of England finally divested this past summer, and we fully expect the Roman Catholic Church in England and Wales to follow suit soon. Why has it taken the Church of England so long? Before I go on to that, it's perhaps worth remembering that the Church of England itself does not own shares in anything. The Church of England does not invest. Instead, two independent bodies, the Church Commissioners and the Pensions Board of the Church of England, invests on behalf of the Church of England. These two are known collectively as the National Investing Bodies. In 2014, a motion on divestment that began in my parish church was considered by our Deanery Synod. It passed and moved on to Oxford Diocesan Synod. This motion called on the NIBs to divest from coal and tar sands immediately, from oil within 3 years, and from gas within 5 years. Now, in many ways, that's a naive motion. No one told me that oil and gas companies were the same, and that to divest from one was necessarily to divest from the other. Nonetheless, it passed at Oxford Diocesan Synod by a close margin, but it passed. By the time it was considered by General Synod, it was no longer a motion, but an amendment. Now, the reason that our motion was now an amendment was that at that same meeting of the General Synod, the NIBs were bringing their climate investment plan. Their plan called for the immediate divestment from coal and tar sands and the beginning of a process of robust engagement with the oil and gas companies to get them to adopt net zero goals. Their plan, I think, emerged from a real listening to the Church of England and its members, and from a real concern about the environment and the challenges of climate change. The NIBs hoped to draw on their undoubted expertise in the realm of investment and the ethical clout of the Church of England. Nonetheless, if the Oxford motion could be termed naive, I think their plan was even more so. Their plan passed by a great motion, and our amendment failed. Thus began their process of engagement. The Transition Pathway Initiative, which you see there on the screen, was the tool they set up in conjunction with the Grantham Institute of the London School of Economics. They broadened their engagement to include much more than just the extractive industries, to include, for example, utilities and the automotive industry. And in some of these areas, they scored real successes. However, I think it's fair to say that with regard to oil and gas companies, even with many years, their successes were at best minimal. And so, beginning in 2017, Operation NOAA worked with others on a new diocesan synod motion on divestment. This motion called on the NIBs to divest from any oil and gas company not aligned with the Paris goal of 1.5 degrees beginning in 2020. This motion passed Oxford comfortably, and you see there at the top left the Reverend Hugh Lee, who seconded the motion at Oxford. But it also passed at Southwark Diocesan Synod. Judging from their reaction, our motion really spooked the NIBs. And so at the 2018 meeting of General Synod in July, they prepared a slick presentation. It was professional, it was slick, and it was light on details or facts. Every major heavyweight in the Church of England at that meeting rose to speak, to plead with Synod. Do not give up on engagement now. It was only when Bishop Stephen Croft of Oxford Diocese stood to speak in favor of the Oxford motion that the members of Synod were confronted with any fact at all about divestment and about oil and gas companies. Nonetheless, their slick presentation did its job. And our motion, now an amendment, failed narrowly. But it set up a compromise motion that was brought by the Reverend Giles Goddard, and you see his picture there in the middle. His motion called for the NIBs to divest from any oil and gas company not aligned with Paris, ending in 2023. And that motion passed comfortably. Now, this was a real win, because whether you begin the process in 2020 or end it in 2023 is not a huge difference. And now General Synod had placed a time limit on engagement. And since 2018, Operation Noah has been supported by many others in keeping the pressure up on the NIBs. For example, Christian Climate Action has organized protests and actions in front of cathedral or in cathedrals, in front of Church House at Westminster, and at General Synod meetings. At Operation Noah, we have organized a number of different letters signed by hundreds of church leaders, like the one we sent to the Pensions Board, asking for the possibility of clergy opting out of the pension that was supported by fossil fuels and opting into one that was fossil-free. There was also the Young Christian Climate Network's action at the Lambeth Conference, which also kept up the pressure on the NIBs in asking all the bishops across the Anglican Communion to support divestment. And at Operation Noah, we began another campaign of encouraging individual dioceses to divest. And there you see the current scorecard. Right now, only 3 dioceses in the Church of England still have investments in fossil fuels. This pressure, coupled with the NIB's lack of progress in engagement, finally led to the Church of England divesting this past summer. But the really crucial element was BP and Shell going back on their promises, meager though they were. It left the NIBs with little option. They had to cut their losses. And now today, the Church of England no longer has any investments in fossil fuels.